Hi guys, I am the absolute worst YouTuber ever. I think it's been months since I posted anything, but it hasn't been, well, it's been months since I recorded something too. I went to the January intersession and I filmed some stuff and I haven't gotten the chance to edit it, so unfortunately I haven't been able to post it, but stick around, maybe you'll enjoy it. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. I would say guess where I am, but it's a little bit obvious. So I'm at the Franklin Pierce School of Law, my school, and I just finished up the last day of the January intersession, and I took a class called Human Rights and Social Justice. It's a week-long course, so much work, but so much good information, and talk about being equipped. I'm in there. So I did interview the professor for the class, and this is my second class that I've taken with her, and I may have talked about the previous class, which was Social Justice and Property. So it was incredibly useful, I think, but unfortunately I recorded it with two cameras, or at least I thought I did, and one of my cameras cut out when I was almost finished with the interview. So I'm going to show you what I've got. I think there's something there for you, so enjoy it. Hi everybody, I know it's been a minute, same as usual, but you know, as always, I'm busy with law school and stuff. So today I'm back in New Hampshire for the January intersession, and I'm taking a class called about social justice and human rights with one of my favorite professors. So stick around because she's here, and we're here with Professor, and I'm going to really say the name wrong. I usually call her Professor when I want her attention. Sorry. That's so okay. Professor Mnisi Weeks?
Close. Mnisi Weeks, yeah.
Mnisi Weeks.
That's
okay.
Right.
So as I talked about on the intro, you are teaching social justice and human rights. Yeah. And last time, guys, I talked to you about the class I took with her, and that was social justice and property. So I'm here having fun, and can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm from South Africa, and I studied at the University of Cape Town, and then I went to the UK and studied there, and then when I finished doing a doctorate on the relationship between Indigenous law and state law in South Africa, specifically looking at women's access to land rights, especially when a spouse passes away. I returned to South Africa and I worked for the University of Cape Town, but it was a project that was funded by Atlantic Philanthropies, which is one of a US-based funder, called the Rural Women's Action Research Program, and it essentially did a lot of research on action research, as the name says, on the ways in which women do or do not get access to decision-making power as well as land in indigenous communities in South Africa. And so it was a combination of research, advocacy, law and policy work.
And all of this work is post-apartheid.
Exactly,
right? Okay.
Right. So this is post-apartheid. So I grew up in South Africa sort of until, I left home, went to college after apartheid had ended. So apartheid ended roundabout when I was transitioning from primary school to high school. So that is a lot of my experience is, having lived through that transition, having seen a lot of the changes that happen, having seen a lot of the challenges, right? And the debates and questions that arise as you try to figure out transitional justice, right? And so the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a huge part of my consciousness during that period of time, and as well as like the drafting of the Constitution. So, essentially I think that that's a big part of why I ended up being really interested in constitutional rights and the rights of people who have been dispossessed, especially indigenous communities who've been very systematically dispossessed and oppressed. So that's been my work primarily, and even though I moved to the US in 2013, so I've been doing that work for about 4 or 5 years while I was in South Africa. I've continued to sort of partner with the organization that I worked for before, and all of the organizations that we partnered with as part of the social justice movement that was advocating for these changes. Because as we've talked about in the class, right, on human rights and social justice, these changes take a movement, right? If you want to see social justice manifest, you actually have to build a movement, build a coalition of actors who are going to be dedicated to researching, advocating, coming up with policy ideas, really pressing policymakers, doing a lot of follow-up, monitoring and evaluation to see if the changes that you've negotiated actually get implemented, and when necessary, litigating, right? Actually taking it to the highest courts and essentially sort of trying to twist government's arms to make sure that they honor their obligations under the Constitution as well as under international law.
Okay. Awesome. That's what we do, folks. So as you guys know, that the focus of my program is intellectual property. But as you've seen, there's space in there to pursue other interests. So I have the intellectual property interest and the social justice. And Professor has been great with helping to prepare me for that. And the class that I'm taking, could you talk about the course a little bit? What we've been doing this week?
Absolutely. It's been fun. It's been a lot of work, and I think Douglas will tell you maybe when I'm when I'm gone. But yeah, I mean, one of the things is that the world is vast and the world is diverse, and so there's just a ginormous human rights literature. And so one of the things we've been trying to do is sort of get up to speed on the history of human rights and really debunking some of the myths around human rights. And some of the myths are actually very mainstream, right? Like things like human rights sort of devolved from the American and French revolutions, sort of falling in like the Roman Empire's history and evolution, and excluding places like Haiti, right, and Latin America, where actually there were some really, really important revolutions that have substantially contributed to our understanding of what it means to be a person, right, who we define as a human being, as well as what we define as having rights. So that's been a big part of what we've talked about, and then really trying to sort of bring it home in the practical sense. So we looked at some case studies. One was South Africa and the Treatment Action Campaign, their advocacy and ultimately litigation in the Constitutional Court for the right to health, and specifically the provision by the government of antiretroviral drugs for mothers who were giving birth, so as to avoid mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS, which obviously is very devastating, and is especially devastating when you get it as a child, because then your prospects of a long life are substantially diminished. So that was the South African case study, followed by the Indian food rights case, where the PUCL brought a case to advocate for the Indian government to actually honor its obligation to provide nutrition, which is a sort of directive principle for governance in the Indian Constitution, and the Supreme Court of India then read that right into the right to life, which is a fundamental right in the Indian Constitution. And so, people who were experiencing extreme deprivation and starvation and actually dying from starvation were provided with a government program that the Supreme Court largely sort of engineered and prescribed to the government and said you have to implement this, which is obviously remarkable within the context of debates about separation of powers, etc. So we've been talking a bit about that, and then talking about international law and like the mechanisms through the United Nations, like the Universal Periodic Review, and each of the treaty bodies and the kinds of reviews that they do under the various covenants, especially the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. I think this morning was pretty good. We looked at the rights of the Quilombos, or Quilombolas in Brazil, and they're descendants of African slaves who were brought over to the Latin American subcontinent or continent, and were subsequently, Brazil was the last to outlaw slavery, and so since then they have been advocating for their rights, and especially rights to land, so that they can have security and they can have not just like physical security, but actually material security, like resources on which to build their futures. And so those are some of the things we've talked about in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and whether the Quilombolas could go and approach that after their reports that they've secured through the special rapporteurs of the United Nations. So how about that? Right to health.
Great, yeah. So guys, now you see what it's like sitting in Professor's class. She gives you a lot of information, and if you're not quick, you're going to miss it. So I'm going to put information about all of those cases in the description if you want to read more about them. So they're all really good. And one thing from this course, like right when we started, our first assignment was the reflection paper about what human rights are. And it's funny, it was one of those questions where you go, well, I thought I knew this, but the ideas we have, the interesting thing about this course, one of the interesting things, is that it kind of it gives you actually not a better idea of what human rights are, but it gives you a better idea of how to look at human rights. As a Westerner, my ideas of human rights are don't always work for the whole world and all cultures and all societies. It's really a sliding scale. But I think that comes back to dignity, which is one thing I talked about in my paper. But even then, I was looking at it from a Western perspective of dignity. So even that's a sliding scale. So it's really interesting. Do we have time? Okay, we have. So we have to get back from our lunch break soon. So just quickly, I wanted to ask you. I am considering going to law school.
Yes.
And I am not decided. What would you tell me? What are maybe I've just started law school and I'm trying to get through it. What advice can you give someone that's considering? So what I asked her after the video cut out was if she had any advice for incoming law students or students that are considering law. And what she briefly discussed was how there are so many things in law, so many things that you can pursue. And before I started on this journey, I didn't know that there were so many choices. And even if you don't practice law, the law degree is useful in a lot of arenas. But the thing she said that really struck me is, and the advice for you guys is that decide what your thing is. Figure out what your one thing is, what drives you, what motivates you, and keep your eye on that, and you'll get through it. And you can. Look at me. I'm doing it. I'm close to finish. I'll finish this year. And I'll keep you guys posted. I'm really looking forward to being finished. It's been a long and a short journey, but it's like it's like the same way you eat an elephant. You take one bite at a time, and that'll get you there. So thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for motivating me and keeping me going in this. So you guys take care, be safe, God bless. So I hope you were able to tolerate that. So that's what I did in January. Then I went through this whole spring semester, which went well, I think. I finished final exams a couple of days ago. Some of them were challenging. The evidence exam, I don't know how I did. I don't actually know how I was doing in that class, because I heard so much from my classmates about our midterm exam. I just didn't want to look at it and get discouraged, but I think I probably did fine. So I've got something coming up here soon. So hopefully I won't have such a long time period between this post and my next post, which I think is going to be great. I've been looking forward to posting this for a while. So I hope you enjoy it. Stay blessed and take care of each other. Thanks for sticking with me. I'll talk to you soon. Then I do the whole intro stuff in my dope music.
Your dope music. I love that. I was like, yeah, this is cool.